So what happened was one of these lizards ran up my boot, up my pant leg, and was heading
Oh,
for my crotch.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous.
all right, folks. Welcome to the Cartoon Insider, where cartoonists talk about animation, comics, and all things related to the industry that we love. I'm very happy to be welcoming on board to this episode Gary Hartle, director, producer of the 2002 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and one of its best board artists, Linnell Forrestall. And myself, I also worked on that show as a board artist pretty early in my career. So we're here today to talk about that, all the triumphs and the follies and all the crazy stuff that happened during that production, how it came to be, why there was never a season three. But we'll start with you, Gary. How did you get involved with Masters of the Universe 2002?
Well, I worked with Rob Hudnut, like back in the day, and when he had gone through Mattel and all that, he was actually the one to call me up, and he kind of had me at the top of his list. He didn't really have a number two in mind, and he liked working with me back then, and was hoping to, uh, you know, start this up again. But he brought me into Mattel and introduced me to Ian. Now, I kept wondering who this guy was staring at me across the table because I'm talking to all the different people in Mattel. And I didn't realize Ian was probably the biggest fan of all that was on that
Oh,
show.
okay.
He was just kind of, just game to go.
Hmm.
And that was going to be his baby. I think Rob kind of helped usher him in. And then Rob went on to other things for Mattel, and then Ian became our point man, you know.
Ian was he a big fan of the original series growing up as a kid? Was
He
that
was, but just like all of us, he had story ideas of his own that he was chomping at the bit. Um, Early on in the story meeting, the one thing I wanted to make sure of that was changed from before, and I didn't have a lot of, I want to do all these things other than I wanted everything to be in Eternia. I didn't want space stuff. I
Mm.
didn't Skeletor to have the power to call his minions in from other planets because to me that made no sense because it was like why wouldn't he just take He-Man and go poof I poof you to outer space or something like that. Other than that, we were leaning pretty hard on the original show, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to keep it here, and I also wanted to keep the technology, not to go too far. And it was interesting what started to kind of uh, play out there, because we would be sitting there and Ian would come in and give us some of where he was going with the story,
Okay.
ahead of time, and that would just start stirring things. And what we would try to do was couch the story, like how did these races come to be? I like what Linnell said in one of our meetings. Linnell said the story before the story. You
Hmm.
know, what was the world before our story started? And so when they would give it to us, we worked really hard on that. And so sometimes while the writers were writing one story, we were coloring it with the world that we had. Like you guys remember the Gar race, and there were three types of them.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and that they basically they came up with the technology with the ones that had wisdom. We had another Gar race that Skeletor came for, very warrior. They got that Roman outfit and all that, and so they basically, we try to always give our villains like a reason for their complaint. And we were here first. We did all this. And
Hmm.
Randall, he came, his main thing was he brought all the races together. There was only one way they were going to push those guys back was it bringing these guys together, which was a very uneasy, even up into his day, coalition to pull together. And if you remember, we gave him that leg brace and we were trying to show that he was all, beat up from his whole thing was war, up until the point he finally sat down on the throne.
Yeah. So this was an attempt to give it a richer sense of, I guess, history, more of like a George Lucas Star Wars approach. So
Exactly.
there's a whole past going into the present, and
Well, the writers would write something like, this guy that was keeping the scrolls,
Mhm.
and we said, well, if he's going to have the history, he'd be Gar, and so we'd paint him blue. So we would design the things with this kind of back underlying story. We would couch their story with the history, like you're saying. We wanted to have this kind of history to it going on behind. And the name came from that one show, Onwar Gar.
Hamwargar,
We didn't
yeah.
know what to call them, Onwar Gar. So we said they're Gar, but they're Onwar were like the guys that maybe had the technology. No,
Right.
maybe they were just
It
a
was like it was like the
religious wisdom
Asians.
type. We knew there were three. Maybe, no, maybe help me remember. There was
I I
the
can't remember
warrior technology, and I think it was more like the
mysticism or something. Like
mysticism.
it was like
Yeah,
there was like the magic, the technology, and the warrior class or something like that.
right.
Are you
That
talking
was
about
it.
the
That was
God
it.
Armor episode?
Looking for someone?
The
Yeah.
one with the God, that's the one I storyboarded on. That's my personal favorite. That
Oh,
was,
that was a good one. That was very
yeah.
good. You actually named the Gar, or not you, but that your show, because on what Gar, and we were like, well, hell, that's what they are.
Well, a
And
lot of those old episodes, we would just get like whatever title or whatever backstory. And it was kind of just hodgepodge, and
right,
us as the crew behind the scenes. It's like, well, we don't know what the writers are
we didn't
writing,
know what
so
to
we're just like,
call
all
them,
right.
so we knew what to call them. I could walk in the room and I could say that guy's Gar to Lanao. He knew where to go. Boom.
These are the B people, these are the Avionian people, and then we would
Yeah,
just like
those
start
guys had
designing
their
stuff.
names, but the Gar didn't have any names, so we just
Yeah.
threw that
So
around.
it's just
Studio
us
names,
nerds
basically.
trying to
Yeah.
give some kind of backstory to the stuff that really it was really random. A lot of the stuff that was like thrown at us, and like, all right, we'll just seize on this and try to build something off of it, whether it was design, whether mostly when it was design or storyboarding. But there was no Bible that really set anything in stone for us creatively. When we were working on that show, so we were just trying to just make up any kind of like connected aesthetics
Yeah.
to
Right.
that show
Yeah,
as much as we
Linnell,
could.
this is interesting. This is news to me. Uh, my recollection, this is going back over 20 years at this point, was that for at least a minute in the beginning, it felt like when I came on, it was just like you and Gary. And so I felt like and you were having designers come in and try out on the show. There Ed Lee was
Deadly,
people were submitting designs at that point still.
hmm
And I remember I was boarding something that was very early concept kind of
We
stuff.
threw you guys toys because we had no designs yet. We said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
here's the toys, draw from this for now.
But
All right.
Lenovo, you
No, go
were
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, were you like the Gary's first? I mean, were you involved with this? You seem very knowledgeable about
No, no.
background stuff.
I was one of the first guys hired. It was a bunch. I can't
Yeah.
remember. I know Jay Oliva was one of the first guys hired.
Well, he
That
was
was
hired after us, as I recall.
He
Oh yeah,
may
that's
have
right.
been. He may have
Yeah,
been.
because he came on to help out Gary, basically.
Yeah,
Oh
He was
yeah,
because I
yeah,
think
doing
we
so
were
much
still
yeah.
as
in
a
development.
producer and
Right.
supervisor director
We
that
were in
Yeah.
Gary
development,
came on later.
and I had you two guys,
Yeah.
and Jay came on, and I think that was his first directorship. Before, because you've been boarding over at Sony. We were all at Sony at
Really?
that time,
Okay.
and that was his first time. So he always credits me with giving him his shot.
hmm
But
Oh,
he
nice.
but he really hit the ground running, and he had strong ideas and all that. And
Yeah. I
I
remember saying to us, he said that, like sitting us down when he first got hired, and he was like, guys, this is probably this may be the only chance in our careers we get to do something this cool. Like, because at that point, shows we had worked into, there were some pretty good ones. We both come from Sony. We were all, me
Yeah.
especially, Linnell J. We had come from Sony and we worked on some pretty cool shows over there, but we
Yeah.
had no idea what was in store for us in the future, where the really animation came to this, huge explosion where, you could kind of start doing whatever you want and telling all kinds of different stories and tell stories for adults. But at that time, it was very much still a kid's medium, unless it was like The Simpsons or Futurama or something.
Mhm, mhm.
And as far as kids, as far as action adventure, I mean, that was like all strictly just for kids. So yeah, I remember him saying that, and I was like, yeah, we really got to try on this thing because this might be the only chance I ever get to work on
Well,
something
well,
this,
I wanted to jump in. First of all, this is like literally 20 years ago that we all worked
yeah,
on this show.
more.
Uh,
Hard to believe it. Can't
yeah, I
believe
was
how
I was
kid-
30, when I
Mm,
first worked on that show. But bef anybody who watches this podcast and watches this episode would think that there is a little bit more organization behind closed doors, behind the scenes. There wasn't, guys. Let's
mm,
make it very clear. It was Mattel. They had a toy. They had a cartoon they wanted to make to sell the toy.
right.
So the people involved were not really trying to make this sort of Star Warsian, like, epic
Well,
tale.
yes and
We
no.
had to,
Yes
well,
and no, because what
well,
it
hold on,
is
hold
is
on.
go
Let me
for it.
chime in. All right.
Finish.
So when we were given toys to make episodes and we were given scripts to make shows about, we had to fill in the blanks on a lot of stuff that
Right,
was not on the page. It's
right.
like you have a toy, it's the ice armor, it's the stilt armor, it's the samurai armor, whatever to sell the toy. And then we get a script based on that. And we had to be basically like, oh, well, come on, let's add a little extra
So
to
even
this and
beyond the
stuff.
lines of the
I
script,
was glad that
Thank you.
Ian would
as
break in our room.
storytellers, we're
Yeah,
adding a whole layer as
Yes.
storytellers
yeah,
to just what we were given.
And we
exactly.
were adding the color
That's
and
true. I remember that.
but Ian would break in our room and use Jay and I as a sounding board, and he would bounce ideas because he wanted a grand thing. He kind of wanted to go in the direction that that I was alluding to.
Mhm.
Uh, Dean had his own. It was funny. It was like a collection of people going different directions in some ways. Dean was plugging the stories forward. Ian was directing him. Where he wanted things to go. Especially I think when we got into the Snake Man series and stuff
Yep.
because he was looking for it to keep getting grander. We were kind of the glue filling in those points with the pre-story that was in our head. We kind of had an agreed pre-story, and Jay and I would bounce when Ian would leave. We'd bounce it back and forth and try to keep on solidifying that, so that when we directed you guys, we were again that cement or the glue filling it in. A good example is like when Skeletor is bringing all the evil Eternians together, the higher ranking ones. And what was the name of the character that had the gem that wiped out the Eternian army and did all these things? And why would he listen to Skeletor? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
After we had seen him wipe out an entire army on the side of a uh, Eternia, it's like now we're bringing Skeletor and all these guys are falling in behind. So we would put like again the glue, and the script says that they're all following. Here's his lines, but we sat down and talked about it, Jay and myself, and we were like, why would he do that? He would just wipe these guys out and go to Eternia again. And so he says something like that. Why should I listen to you? So we took that line and we actually had him blast Skeletor from behind. And there's this blast, and then hit a mountain, hit another mountain to show the power of it. And then it's all this smoke. And then it cleared, and there's Skeletor floating above no mountain. And he comes over and he just takes it off of him. And
Wow.
right then, without having to say anything more, you realize, whoa, okay, he's like somewhere else. You know what I mean? But we had to make that glue. Otherwise, the audience would have been like, why is he falling?
We had like Hordak, we had like the faceless one, we had so many other
Hordak,
bad
yeah,
guys.
I love the whole Hordak thing at the back thing because that went into a whole new thing that what we were trying to go within our arc.
For season 3.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if
That
we
never
got into
happened.
season 3, that would have been it would have really closed a loop. And Dean, I talked to Dean Stefan a few times about some of the things that we were doing to try to hold it together, and he actually was very appreciative of that. And he
Mhm.
says, "Dang, I wish you guys would have been in the story meetings." And I'm just like, because they kind of closed the door
Yeah.
because we're fans, like they were fans, and we weren't looking to take over that area, but we do know that if by keeping this backstory together, that would help, you
Yeah,
know,
and like I'd say that did
solidify the
come
front.
through.
What's
It did.
that?
I'd say that did come through. Maybe not to the degree that we all wanted it to as much, but it was there. I felt like there
The
was a
fans were
history.
savvy. Remember,
Yeah, that
we used
honestly,
to
that
go on and we would read what they'd say and come out on Friday, and we would we'd run there and just see. I've never experienced where such interaction with fans like that
oh,
before.
cool. On the newly formed interweb
Oh, they would pick
Yeah.
it
back in
up.
the
They'd
day.
pick it up when we
I,
dropped the ball, and they'd pick it up when
Yeah.
we were pulling something together. It
I,
was
I got I got to
just fun.
interject, and I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but I'm just gonna tell a weird anecdote. So I'm in my home office and stuff, and I'm working, and then there's the new He-Man show that came out a few years ago that our one of our friends and colleagues, Mike Gogan, worked on
Hmm.
that popped up recently. My wife is in the next room and she's watching it, and I don't have my headphones on. I'm hearing all this dialogue. It's the one that Kevin Smith worked on. I'm hearing all this dialogue. I'm going, the heck is she watching in there? So I get up, I go into the living room, and I watch that new Kevin Smith, Mike Gogan version of the He-Man show, and it almost broke my heart. Well, it did break my heart because they wrote the stories they were telling on that show were the stuff that we wish we had done because we did it. We did what we could. We had as much fun as we could, but
Yeah, yeah.
I called Gary and I was like, dude, if you watch this new He-Man show, it is basically everything we wish we could have done. And it's also everything we wish we could have done if there was a third season. Because I remember Gary, Jay Oliva, they would sit around and sort of have these machinations about, oh, we could do this with Hordak and we could do this and blah, blah, blah. And this can happen. This could happen. We can have this big battle that Gary had planned for He-Man and I mean for Skeletor and Randor that he stewed on. That was a great idea for a story that you guys had worked on. Then I watched the Kevin Smith, Mike Gogan version, and they kind of started doing that, and I'm
They were
going,
doing that kind of
oh
stuff. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
this is what Gary
Well,
and Jay
it's
want to
very, it's
do.
a,
Oh my God.
the thing with a story is you don't fight it. In other words, a
Yeah,
story kind of, as soon as you start bringing characters in, it should be the characters driving it. I'll give you an example, and you brought it up, and that was the very opening where they're going to bring all the characters in. Am I still okay? You guys look
yeah.
frozen to me for a
No, no,
second.
no. Listen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so in comes Keldor, and when Ian came in and said they were brothers, and that was the secret that they're half brothers, and da 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 da.
Okay.
All of a sudden, everything shifted because we had started planning out because this cool fight and to show all the minions and all the bad guys, the good guys and the bad guys all fighting, which had been, the thing about a battle is it can be fatiguing. That's what the director of Kingdom of Heaven says. It's just like, he wanted to always be focused on what was the important thing, and the battle happens around you. But if you don't focus on the important thing, you've lost the audience because it's just bang, bang, bang. I don't care.
It's like pro wrestling. You have to have a story behind
Yeah, yeah,
why these
exactly.
guys are in man panties jumping
But
around on
what's
each
their
other in an
little
arena.
little thing? Yeah. So
Sure.
in this one, as soon as I knew that, we brought Keldor in at the end, as we did, and kind of gave him his thing, and then we stayed the focus between him and Randor, going back to again what you said before, Leno, and that's the story before the story.
Hmm.
And then that added so much power that every time those two were in the room, it was electric, and even the audience would go, oh my gosh, they're in the same room, and they'd have this whole battle, just between the two of them. The other guys are fighting. Who cares? We're going to get to them. We've got a whole series. We're going to see them in their glory. But these guys were the thing. And if you think about it, the way we were going backstory wise again was they were brothers, but Keldor was firstborn. So
Mm.
he has legitimate right. And we were going to do push a whole story that was anti-prejudiced and everything about why didn't he get to sit on the throne?
Because he
He's
had a skull face.
Well, yeah,
No,
because and I talked to the writer, and
Especially
they
if he
were
had skull
starting.
face.
They started moving toward that in some ways
Yeah.
because what happened was he keeps trying to come into Eternia, come in, come in. It's not working by force, and it
Mm.
was that scroll guy that we talked about was going to pull it out and sit there and go, you have a right to just walk in the throne. You've got a legal right. And so he was going to take that thing and right past the guards and what, and walk right up to Randor and challenge him, to combat, single combat. And then, of course, Adam, hey, what's going on? And Man of War, and he shuts everybody down and he goes, because he knows,
Hmm.
challenges him, he has to accept because he does have a right,
Hmm.
being they both had the same father,
I
so
remember when I came in, maybe even on my first day, and you showed me the boards to that opening. I found it very inspiring, and that really set the tone for this new He-Man that we ended up working on. And I felt like, yeah, you really had the stuff for this kind of show. And I felt like they, my sense, at least from where I was, is that you were being pulled back from that, from really going as much into that kind of story you were wanting to tell, and what the mandate was, the toy-driven side was. I have a recollection of doing the first thing I boarded. I don't know how it fit into, if it was from the episode, but it was a fight scene between He-Man and Skeletor at the edge of a cliff. And
yeah, I remember that
told
one.
me, I think you told me it almost got me fired because you were like, yeah, man, this is like going to be like Conan, and Conan was something I loved and understood. And so,
I don't
I,
remember
you know,
you almost being fired. Give me that.
because so I boarded it with that kind of savage intensity. So, where they're like locking up swords and gritted teeth and faces into camera. So you're like putting the camera right in between the sword blows going at each other's faces. And
You know what's interesting about
and
that?
that
Because I
was like
know,
way too much. And I felt
right,
like,
we were handcuffed in the beginning
yeah,
and then unhandcuffed.
okay.
Because, in the beginning, if you remember the spinning swords and stuff like that, it's like
Right.
they weren't allowed to touch each other.
So you
And
just, yeah, there was a lot
all
of,
I could do is just do backflips and whatever and hit
yeah,
props and
right.
whatever,
Yeah.
and near misses and all that kind of stuff. And then finally they go, the film comes back, that's stupid, and let them
Oh,
go.
okay.
And then we did because
Okay.
you also did another fight scene that was
Mhm.
fantastic, really rocked later on. And that might have been with Zodak. I'm not sure. Did you work on that one?
Oh, yeah, when they faced off against one
You
another.
could really go, you could let go because you were handcuffed up
That's
front.
true. That's true.
And then later you
Yeah.
let go,
So it was a
so
little bit of a back and forth because I feel like that opening like was great. I mean, you're going through the clouds down to the temple. You had all these great scale shots where everything was huge and epic. And then the fight scene between Randor and Keldor, right? It was pretty intense, and it ended up with acid being,
yeah, I
coming
don't know how we got
out
that
your
out
face.
of
I was
it.
like,
Don't
wow.
hit each other with swords, but I can throw acid in your face.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden we get past that. I felt like, oh, this is the He-Man I'm working on. And then it's and then it's like you said, a lot of sword spinning, a lot of silliness and humor. But yeah, I guess it did sort of seesaw back and forth because
Yeah,
I do remember towards the end it
Ian, I
got
think,
pretty intense.
went to Mattel and said, we have to let this open up a little more.
Oh,
He really
okay.
was the point man in opening it up because
Okay.
he realized that what it was looking like. And we tried to give, I liked that Skeletor would wear the hood a lot.
Hmm.
Because when he says call me Skeletor, he was a beautiful man, what I mean, and it was like vain and whatever else, and I think his brain cracked,
Right.
and so he covered it a lot of times and pulled it out whenever it was handy for him and whatnot, and it gave us a chance to use dark and shadow a lot, and
Uh-huh.
that he would always kind of come from places, you think he's not there and then he's there. Although Randor pulled that on him, that was on Tim Navarre's board where Skeletor's in the foreground. He thinks he's going to go under the Eternia, and then he slid, and there's Randor right behind him. Man, I could feel that one when I saw that shot. And that's what I think happened quite often on that show was you guys and all of us being big fans of this and knowing the stakes on the characters. When we got a chance to play the stakes, we got a chance to play the character.
Hmm.
We went, and that was the thing. Sometimes there were silly episodes and goofy things like that, and there's nothing you could do. And we all kind of lament, and you still had to push forward through that. But I think,
The coconuts episode.
There's different ones, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is when it started falling more and more into the groove that we were, kind of going for, it gave us a chance to go for it and make that work. There was one thing I written with your board. I wish I would have got there a little earlier to you because you had already worked out a fight scene and I wanted it to go a certain way. And that was that Man at Arms, each of these guys had a fighting style. And Man at Arms is a minimalist fighter, meaning that he'll find your weakness and exploit it. So, what was it? It was Trapjaw tried to do this big thing with his mechanical arm, and he would just kneel down, hit his joint, and then broke his
Right, right. I
off.
remember those. I remember those conversations.
Right, yeah. So he was more of a minimalist.
Mm.
He-Man actually would use the strength and more athletic, but he was also that kid inside, up and coming with the power,
Mm.
right? And animal and Man at Arms being the tutor. Well, in your episode, there was going to be a tutor's tutor. We are going to meet the man that trained him, and I was like, if he was a
Huh?
minimalist, I wanted to see an ultimate minimalist. You know what I mean? It was just like, how could he get there where he just sidesteps an inch and lets you go flying, and he
Right.
keeps so that you could say, well, that's where he got it. You know what I mean? And that Man at Arms moves a lot more than he would, and you almost don't see movement. But you had already done it, so we left it. But I was,
Mm.
I was like, dang, I wanted to get in there and show that, every time there's somebody, a character has a thing, how could we really couch that thing? You know what I mean? And
Yeah. This
bring
is
that to the
TV
screen.
animation from back in the day, so it moves like a freight train. Boom,
Oh,
boom.
it did. Those
Incredible.
Yeah,
shows,
yeah.
boom,
And we
boom.
were, and what's interesting too is like this
And
wasn't
plus, I was picking
He-Man.
fight scenes, so I wasn't always directing. I was in there because you guys were having too much fun. I said, "Give me that fight scene," and I'd be in my, which is bad. I probably should have been butterflying around more than I did,
Well,
but
Yeah,
it,
that's the other thing. That's the other thing we have to tell people who, are on the outside of animation,
Mhm.
especially on a TV schedule,
Yeah.
a TV
you're
budget.
cooking.
It's like you don't have much time. You don't have time to massage stuff. It's I believe it was Gary. I first started working with Gary as a storyboard artist on Johnny Bravo,
Mm.
and Gary would slap my hand. It's getting inside baseball, but he would slap my hand a few times that I would draw too noodly with like a pen, and he was like, "No, man, grab a Sharpie, grab a big fat Sharpie, and like
Yeah, I remember that. I
get
wish
the
I
energy
had
out."
that back then.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it really did
I had the
make
same
you
problem.
mentally. Yeah,
Yeah,
it would make you mentally
yeah,
faster because it's just
yeah,
like
yeah.
One
first
of the things I
first
wanted to
instinct is the
do,
best instinct. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we ended up going to script, but I like the visual storytelling, and it was so funny because we were trying to show Mattel that when they came in, we were putting it up on the wall at first, and they go, I don't know if that works." And they go, "Don't you think you should have a close up there?" I went, "It just worked." The
Mhm.
idea is to spit out artwork and then look at it, and it immediately tells you what's
Yeah.
not working or what's working. And what I like about that process
Mhm.
is every one of us had gone to a movie, and what do the three of us would do? We would sit down, have coffee, and talk about what was wrong, what was right, I like that, I didn't like that, I could have couched that better. But if you stick it visually up, even if you did it wrong, let's say somebody comes up and they do their whole section of the board completely wrong, all of us will immediately know what it should be right. Instead of having to say, what should it be? Oh, I don't know. We could this. It was like, it should be this. Not over budget, and we weren't all over the place, and
Yeah.
we did some big budgeted thing or
But
looking.
with it was a very, yeah, limited budget, but very big in scope. And yeah, we were all sort of clustered together in a basement, literally
Yeah,
a
there was a
basement.
lot of
We didn't
pre-planning.
have our own cubes or
Yeah.
offices. I mean, I
Wait,
guess,
wait, wait,
but
wait, wait, wait. I
yeah.
gotta interject. There's a
Uh-oh.
few great stories of working at Mike Young Productions back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
It was it was a small little office on the bottom floor of this in Woodland Hills.
Mm,
But we were all in these weird partitioned off little cubicle of the desks that they had to squeeze in this
right.
basement area. So not everybody had their own workspace. We kind of, for lack of a better term, we kind of swastika together all of our
Yeah.
different cubicles so we can all have like a little partitioned area. And Vin was in a space where he was kind of little. He didn't have really a sort of partitioned off space.
No.
So I don't know if he did it or somebody else did it, but if you ever watch that show, WKRP in Cincinnati, Les Nessman did not have an office, so he drew on the floor area where his his cubicle slash
Did
office
you
was
do that, Vinny? Did you make
No,
it?
it was done as a joke to me because I was always complaining before you finished, Linnell. I was always complaining about it
on the
because I
floor
was just in
for
an open
Vin.
space and I was right near the door, and so everybody you especially were especially bad. Were constantly clipping my chair as they were walking by.
I'm
So
sorry, man.
and it would be like, ugh, like it was just yeah,
Hard
it
to
was
work like that.
right. So
Yeah.
it was that kind of crowded,
Well,
and
and
So
even
so so the
even in our
and
room,
so
Jay
and
and I
so
so wait, wait,
shared.
wait. So the best with Bitten, when
right.
we would go by his desk and like, hey, we're gonna get lunch. Bitten would either ignore us or we would mess with him. So we go pretend to knock. Hey, Vin, are you in there? I can't tell if you're in there. And he go, oh, hey, hello, guys. Hold on, I'm shuffling. Give me a second. I'll be there in a second. He pretend
Oh,
like he had a wall.
wait a second. I got to do an aside. It's me
Well,
and
well, hold on, but you got to mention what happened. That
what?
the fake
Good one.
office thing is I was
Yes.
complaining about, especially the corner where I was constantly getting clipped. And so Eric Canetti actually made me that outline of an office the way Les Nessman did in
Yeah,
WKRP
so it's
with
Kinetti. Yeah.
duct tape, and he
I
actually
said, stay
formed
outside this
around
line.
my chair and desk. So that
That's
would
good.
be like this imaginary thing that people were not supposed to cross.
And
They
people did.
invade my space.
People listened to that the little piece of tape. You know, they went
Yeah.
around it.
Oh, did they? I hope so. I
Yeah.
can't remember. I think
Yeah.
it
It,
Well,
did.
your
it's
work started getting better, so you weren't worried about getting bumped all the time.
All right. I
it,
remember.
it's little things like that that actually made the job fun and funny. Aside from the actual drawing cartoons,
All
but
right.
We were a total cast of characters, that's for sure. And there was a lot of lightheartedness. But what I did like was everybody, when it was time to work, it was kind of like a mash unit. Everybody put their nose to the grindstone and really got the stuff done. I was shocked. And the creativity in the one good thing about that bullpen area, because there's times I came out of my office and sat down in a chair, in the bullpen and did artwork right alongside you guys because the energy in the air was just it was immense.
Yeah, it was fun.
My little aside was Vinton as Batman. Can I tell that story, Vinton?
Oh, I'm not sure I even remembered that story.
Okay, what
Please
happened
go
was Vinton
ahead.
and I went to a lunch at some mall out in that area. And,
Oh,
and
that.
remember that? And
We
here I
yeah,
am,
we had
whatever.
a
I,
lunch
I'll make it
break.
really short. I'll make it short. But what happened was some lady screaming because a guy grabbed her purse and was running through the mall. And Vinton was just like Batman. He just jumped up and started going after the guy. And I'm like, I got to back up your friend. Now I'm trying to run in cowboy boots. He's got his tennis shoes. He's running down there. And there were some other people that joined us, a couple of Mexican guys, and they got in there and they grabbed the purse off the guy out of the car. They couldn't drive away, and one guy got out and ran away or something. And when
Yeah.
the police came in and said, "That's the guy, he's over there,"
Yeah, well, what happened is,
I was
we saw
Robin
we
that
saw we
day. He was Batman, I was Robin.
this was during our lunch break while
Yes.
HeMan, we would go to the Westfield Mall and we were
Yeah.
in the food court just eating our lunch. And then yeah, we heard a scream and he's got my purse. And we literally saw the guy running out the front
And we
door with the
went
purse.
after him.
I without thinking, I just got up and running, and then Gary started running with me.
Oh, you're not going to do that alone.
Yeah, we were running. So we ran out the door trying to catch this guy.
Yeah.
And then a couple other dudes saw what we were doing and they
They
were
came with
close.
us.
There was a getaway car out there. So the
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
first snatcher, was running to the getaway car and the other guys were closer. So they intercepted the car and reached in to grab the purse from the guy
I
while
remember that.
while he was getting in his getaway
And
driver's
one of them was reaching on the
and
thing. It could have been a big mess.
and then he suddenly let go and he stepped back and he said, he's got a
I
gun. And
I
so and so and so
remember
at
that.
that point I stopped running.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay.
more.
And
Yeah,
then
this
and
ain't
then
worth dying
but
for.
what was funny is that the car they were so panicked because all
But
these
the
and Gary and these
driver
other
got
two
out and ran
dudes are
away or
all like
something. Yeah,
running towards them.
yeah,
They couldn't start the engine. So the getaway
right.
driver couldn't start the engine.
One of them
It
ran.
just drifted slowly around the corner.
The boom.
Down because it was at an incline. And we thought they had a gun. So we're like, well, okay, whatever. And
Yeah.
then
never heard this story.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he did
yeah.
it. It's
Oh,
amazing. He
we
did it.
came back to tell you guys
Yeah,
about
and
it.
then it drifted around the corner and disappeared. And then the security came out. And so I was
I thought it
explaining
was
it. And
cops.
then
Was curious.
so I was like, yeah, we were out here and the car was, this is where the car and it went around that
But you
corner.
kept pointing to the guy that was hiding. Isn't that guy
I was
ran away
pointing
and
to
he's
the
over there?
corner. And I was pointing to the corner. and then out of the bush, this head
Head
popped
popped.
up. It was just like, because they guess they never started the engine, so they just were hiding in the bushes.
Yeah. Well, we
And
had
I
one
was
of
like,
them.
"That's
We had
him."
one of them. Yeah. But I
So yeah,
remember
yeah.
the biggest thing about that though was, so this is all done. We're going back to finish our lunch. When we get to the mall, the whole thing erupted.
Oh, that's right.
They all
We went
went
back to
nuts.
finish our lunch, and then like old ladies were saying, "That was so brave of you." And then
And
everyone was like,
it was just like, we have to get out of here.
"Yeah, it was very
It
uncomfortable."
it was too much. It was this whole thing. I think,
Butch and Sundance over here.
yeah, yeah. It was quite a day. It was an
That was
amazing day. But
good time.
that those kind of things, there were millions of stories between all of us of things and stuff that we did. That was mine and Vinton's at that time. But almost every day we had something. It was fun to come to. It was always, yeah.
Wait, I got to interject.
Oh, you're not
So
going to tell it.
this is my favorite story.
Oh,
Gary
okay.
does not want to tell the story. It's
Oh, okay.
100% real. I'll
All
give you the
right.
setup.
Uh,
So since we were in Woodland Hills in this little office space on the bottom floor of this office, and they used to have the back door around the hallway open, and there was a little garden area off of the 405 freeway. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, or the 101 freeway. Anyway, and we're in Woodland Hills, and there's like this garden area that with a patio we could go and sit out. So little lizards, little garden lizards used to wander into our work area. And eventually we caught a few of them and kept them in terrariums as pets, like little office pets. And we'd feed them crickets and stuff like that. And we went to Petco. But I'll never forget, I was working late one night. Gary, you'll have to fill in the rest of the story.
Yeah.
But I remember Gary lets out a scream. And if you haven't seen Gary, you don't know Gary. Obviously, he's about like 6'1". He wears cowboy boots, he wears a cowboy hat, and he wears these tight ass jeans. And I remember he came around the corner and he yelped for something. And he's like, "Ah, somebody help me." And the
I'll
rest,
pick
well,
it
so
up
what
from
happened,
there.
Gary? What happened? Tell the audience,
Thanks.
tell
Thanks for the
the
embarrassment.
people
I'll
at
throw
home.
myself under the bus now. So what happened was one of these lizards ran up my boot, up my pant leg, and was heading
Oh,
for my crotch. And
I remember that.
I caught the lizard with my two hands mid-fly. Yeah,
Wow.
and or
In these
mid-thigh,
tight ass
mid-thigh.
jeans.
And so I've got him. You can see the shape of him there. And I'm walking
Oh,
in and I go, okay, I gotta get this lizard out of my pants, and he's clinging on with his claws. He won't go down. And so all the guys were leaving. They were heading for lunch, but I asked, hey, can somebody help me with this? And Tim didn't want to do it. I could see he was so reluctant, but he went for it. And we had to go into the bathroom. I had to drop my chores so he could grab the lizard and bring the lizard out. And that became a running joke. I came in to work next time with, I think it was Woody going, I got a lizard in my pants and all kinds of weird things like that. You
I
guys were
remember that.
endlessly not letting me live it down. And here's Linnell not letting me live it down, even to this podcast.
Because
And
it's a
now
fantastic anecdote.
it's out to the world. So
Yeah.
Now the whole world knows I had a lizard in my pants.
Wait,
my
wait, wait,
my
wait.
legions of followers and
Your
listeners
legion of followers are all
are
know.
all going to
Thank
hear
God there's
this.
only about 100 of them.
Anybody could do a podcast and talk about like what's going on in animation and the layoffs and stuff. Who tells stories about fighting crime at a mall, thwarting a robbery, and also being attacked, have a lizard in your pet? Who tells those in a podcast? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Those are the
Didn't even
animation
have to
stories
run so
most
far if
people
I
don't
had
tell.
my rope.
No, yeah, you would literally would have caught it. You would have
Just would
literally
have
caught it
got
with
him.
with a lasso. But yes, so yes, this is a
This is
100%
an
true
inside
story.
scoop. This is the stories you're not going to hear from all those outsiders talking about animation. We were there in the
Hmm.
trenches, in the basement.
There are characters, and there was stuff going on every day, and uh, we even played games at night. We made
The
up
airplane game.
Yeah,
yeah,
you,
and
you,
talk
you were
smack, and
making
then
up
you played
names for
every night at the end. But
Yeah.
yeah.
it was a great time, and I think that the stuff with the shows, it really came out that creative energy, the glue stuff, the pre-talks, the pre-stories to each script, trying to align it to this loosely put together thing that we had that we were trying to go toward, and it was interesting to watch Dean and them start to move toward that.
Okay.
A good one was uh, oh, who's the queen? What was her name again?
Marlena.
Marlena, yeah, that I think in the old one, she was from Earth or something. And I think they only did that so they could have a Christmas episode or something.
Yeah.
Right.
We wanted to have a thing with Marlena, and we talked to Ian about it. And I think he was the one that came up with it at first when he went, "What if Marlena was Gar?" And we all went, "Whoa!" And then of course, you don't throw a bomb like that in and walk out the door, which he did. He would throw something like that in and he would leave. And then of course, Jay and I was just like, blah, 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 back and forth how that could be. And we came up with this again, free thing that doesn't mean anything. The stuff I'm telling you, I like what Ian said. What we did was what it was. And everything I tell you about this stuff has nothing to do with anything other than conversations we had back and forth in the back.
Machinations and fanfic, basically.
Right. And then wherever the writer went with it, he went. But the idea was there is an episode where she fought these lizard guys to a standstill alone, which gave a little hint that there was more to her than we all thought. We thought she was just like, I'm a queen sitting on a throne, blah, blah, blah. But there was an episode where she was going off on some sort of
diplomatic mission,
whatever it was, and her ship crashed. These lizard guys came out, which gave He-Man and everybody some pause, and she held her own on that, and everybody was like, "Holy smokes, what's Marlena about?" Well, anyway, in our machinations, using Linnell's word, we thought she originally, out of the Gar race, it was Skeletor's mother. Keldor's mother at the time, she always felt that he should be running things and everything else, being that he's firstborn, whatever. But she sent Marlena in as a assassin to Randor. So really, in the beginning, she was an assassin.
Oh, wow.
And she had something that kept her looking, some sort of magic, keeping her looking Eternian. Not only did he fall in love with her, she fell in love with him. She couldn't do it. He did not know that he's in love with a Gar.
They were blue-skinned people.
Blue-skinned people.
Right.
Yeah, with the little teeth and all that. So the look that she has was always a facade. But when they fell in love, she could never say who it was because he was of the ilk back then from his father and whatever. That's what we were going to make a prejudiced thing about that. The only good Gar is a dead Gar kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Because that's all he did was fighting.
This was first season, or
This was machination.
Yeah, you guys are sitting around
But
trying
you
to
have
figure
to
this out.
realize that there were episodes moving toward that, and that was one of them, showing that she was something different.
I'm
We
gonna
did that
try
episode, but the machination never came. It never came up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To the fruition. But the idea was we were going to do an episode where he sees these Gar run across. He's out on his not porch, whatever you call them, and he sees Gar running and jumping the fence. What the heck? And when coming from his bedroom, whatever, when he goes down and opens up the door, he catches her without the magic. He sees her as Gar.
Oh.
And it just blows up,
That never happened, but that's where it was going.
That never happened. That's where we're.
That would have been great.
Oh,
Yeah.
because then all of a sudden he's got to deal with the fact, she betrayed me. She loves you. And then Man-at-Arms coming to her aid, people coming to her aid. And then at the same time, but him, this big rift happens. And he ends up putting her in a dungeon, and it became a thing where He-Man was going to break her out, and then literally it becomes between war coming between Gar and Eternia with He-Man. The whole point of him being, getting the sword and saving the day is because he's from both worlds too.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Like I said, I did watch the Kevin Smith version that Mike Gogan worked on.
Yeah.
And there was just all regrets because I'm like, they're doing a lot of the stuff that Gary Harlow and Jay Oliva had been thinking about and trying to do and putting all this drama.
And Ian too. Ian came down and sparked things like that, and we would roll with it. Again, Jay and I'd be the glue to that, and we would start couching shows toward what Ian would say. And then he would work with the writers and move certain stories and that. I don't even think the writers had all this stuff.
No.
And
I don't think so either.
Do you feel like the newer He-Man show that aired on Netflix, it could be kind of a spiritual successor to the one we were
I didn't
working.
see all of it. But the things I did see they look beautiful. At first, I thought
I
it was our show, and then I saw, wait, that's not quite right. But the stuff that I saw that they had cut together and everything, it looked beautiful.
Yeah,
So
look, it was nice looking.
I
But
I I I would look at the I would look at that version of He-Man the same way you would look at, say, Batman Brave and the Bold compared to Batman the Animated
oh,
Series.
okay.
It's just like, nah, it's just somebody trying something new and different.
I mean, it was a
And I'm
different kind of thing.
yeah, and
I have to take a
I'm
look at
always
it. I'd
cool
like
for
to
some.
see how it was because it looked very beautiful from what I saw. And yeah, there was somebody that was we worked on those characters from the ground up, and it was very difficult. And I know they used a lot of uh, rotoscope and everything in the first one, but the fans would fight with each other over did they like what we were doing, what they were doing, and there was one fan that put side by side, well, why isn't animated better? I go, it wasn't animated back then; it was rotoscope. A
It
man
was
ran
rotoscope.
through and they
Yeah,
traced it.
there were like 5 scenes that were rotoscope that they just played
We
over
used
and over
no
when they need
rotoscope.
to fill a gap between one scene and another scene.
Right.
Sometimes it didn't even obey scene direction. It was
No, they
just,
didn't
Yeah,
care. They just
and
tried to
and then
fit in
everything
what they
else around
already
it
had.
was honestly pretty crappy. I
Right.
have
I
to
wait, wait,
say.
wait,
We
I got the
tried to do
story.
it from the ground up for better or for worse, but the animation was good or it was weak, depending on what overseas studio used it, what particular artist did it. We did it from the ground up. We did it the hard way.
Yeah.
Let's put it
I,
that way.
I have an anecdote or a little story. I remember when we first all started first season, and Vinton, you're a couple years older than me. Jay Oliva is like 4 or 5 years younger than me.
Mhm.
And so when the show came out, the original show in the 1980s, I was like 9, 10 years old. You were like 11 years old. Jay was like 4 or 5 years old. There's a big difference in perspective of a 11-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
So I remember when Ian Richter, our executive producer, he was like, "Hey, you guys want to see some old episodes to get inspired to watch the show and be a part of the show?" And I remember you, Vin, particularly, just like me, we were like, I remember the old show. It was like when I was 11, it wasn't that good. But
Yeah.
Jay saw it when he was like 4 years old. Was like, yeah,
Right.
I want to see it. I
He
love
saw
that
the
show.
world. He saw
Yeah.
the
And then
world.
we watched the old 1980s version, and it was like, this is so bad. And look, if you love it, I don't want to yuck people's
Yeah.
yum. If you
If
love
you're
that old
We're
show,
gonna dump
if
all over
you're
you
four to
now.
seven, if you were four,
yes,
yeah, and I felt like in the beginning there was a pull to like we need to make this new one more like the 4 to 7, and I felt like, and I guess we did. I guess we did event.
I think
You know,
that's
there was
it.
a
I
little
think what we
push
did
pull
is
going on, and I guess we did.
we
You,
tried to
Barry,
keep
you won that battle for the most
right.
part.
We tried to keep the
Yeah,
tropes and all the things and
right.
the characters and stuff intact.
Hmm.
And then do like you said, take the 4-year-old part because the 4-year-old, it's a world. They see
Right.
something way
yeah,
deeper, and try to bring that also.
Hmm.
But I got to see the ratings, and we actually eclipsed the original's ratings at the
Really?
time.
In
Yes,
season
we
one.
were like 4 times as high in the ratings,
Huh.
and because everybody's like, oh well, maybe we weren't able to. Maybe it was the older adults coming to see it because they remember when,
Yeah.
and they were the 4-year-olds, and we gave them that extra, kind of fluff in there. But
Let's talk about that a little bit. We're gonna wrap up here pretty soon. I'm gonna
okay,
make sure we kind of cover that. I know one thing like that opening, which I spoke of that I love so much that you did, Gary, for the first episode. I came across that on YouTube and it had millions of views. Like there's a lot of people really looking fondly back on that at this point, I would
and
say.
they brought their
But
kids along. I think. I
but
think.
but but there is a perception though, and this is like with that it wasn't as successful as the original series ultimately, and it was canceled after season two. I left after season one, so I wasn't seeing it from the inside the way you guys were working on it
Yeah.
on season two, but I was watching him and I really liked the direction it was going. I was looking forward to a season three, but that season three never happened. And was that because of declining viewership, or what was it you think that prevented this from, because it had built up a lot with the Hordak, right? Was you kind of,
I think it was. I personally think it was toy sales, but
oh, it's just about the toys.
Oh yeah, when the guys would go on and they would literally go to the stores right away and they would talk
Yeah.
about, here we got all these He-Man variants, but they really wanted to see more of the characters, and all of a sudden there weren't characters on the shelf, and that was our perspective from our point of view, but I
Yeah.
think Mattel was gonna throw it in our
But
direction.
Mattel, it was more of a Mattel thing where they felt like they weren't not about the ratings of the show itself, but that it wasn't selling enough
Wasn't
toys.
selling enough
And that
toys.
was an argument
That's
that
really
I
what it
heard.
comes down to is if the toys had been ripping off the shelves and people were just like clamoring for it,
Yeah.
but they were clamoring in a different way. Some people were saying they were looking for toys and couldn't find them. Some people were
Okay.
saying that the variants came out too soon and they wanted to see more of the other characters before that.
Well,
Right.
And brought a collection, I
well,
don't
to interject, like when we were kids, we grew up on the 3 3/4 GI Joes and stuff,
Right.
as well as the 12 inch. And or Star Wars 3 3/4 figures, when you had those toys on the shelf, you the prevailing theory is like, well, you want the hero character, right? You want the Luke Skywalker character, or you want the Duke character. Well, the viewing audience go, yeah. Screw Duke. Who's this guy in all black? Who's this Snake Eyes guy? I want Snake Eyes, or I want yeah, boys don't
That's
play
how
with girl
kids
toys.
think.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, wait, hold on. I want Scarlet. She's a cool
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
So I think toy wise, for them to keep pumping all the different versions of He-Man and Skeletor, when the audience was like, yeah, I want
Okay.
Hordak.
They
I
want
want
like
which guy? I want Ram Man,
yeah.
and it's like, but
Yeah.
I can't find Ram Man, or I can't find Trap Jaw, because they've got 17 versions of He-Man in the ice armor, when it's like, and one or two Teela's or one and two versions of Orko that you like. I wanted an Orko, but dang it, they only had one Orko on the shelf, and they've got seven, samurai armor He-Mans on the
Yeah,
shelf.
totally. Yeah,
That's my opinion.
right, because it's like you want a universe of to play in, right? And how
Yeah,
you can create
I
your
think that's
stories with all the different characters. If you just have five different variations of He-Man, it's almost like that's just selling to a collector's market or something.
yeah.
But
Um,
if I don't know, you're talking about the rating drop off. I didn't know about that. If there was a rating drop off, then I think that's a legitimate argument that we're going a little too adult, if not adult.
yeah,
And
but maybe it was just not about the ratings of the show. Maybe it was about the toy sales from Mattel. Because
could be. I mean, I wish we had a chance to, because we literally wanted to dove uh, He-Man into She-Ra. We even had a whole arc going from He-Man
I
to
yeah,
remember
that'd
that.
be awesome.
and again, machinations and machinations on top of them. Whether we ever would have got a chance to do that or not, I think because dialogue was starting to open up between writers and us, things were starting to move like that.
Mhm.
And so I think we might have seen a good, at least, conclusion. And I think everybody that works on any series would like to see an arc and a conclusion, and we're done. I was watching a whole thing on Smallville, and one of the things they were saying was we were done. He was no longer a kid. It's
Right.
time for the movies to take over, and to have that kind of feeling, like this is as far as we can go with it. You know what I mean? We're done.
Never got that closure.
We never got that closure.
Yeah, they need
And
to
that's how
bring it back
the
somehow.
audience felt that too. They
Mhm.
wanted to see the closure of what we were doing, and that would have been cool. Uh,
At least a TV movie or something. I heard there's a script out there that I don't know, Dean Stefan wrote it or somebody wrote a script that
for a TV movie.
Larry Tilio or something.
that was like a something that kind of wrapped up some of the stuff that was set up in season 2, I think.
I loved what Tim did on that thing with he did the backstory of Skeletor going to Hordak. His face is still melting, pieces are falling off through his hands, and that whole thing tying Hordak, and that was our linchpin going to where we were going to go next.
Mhm.
Is showing that Skeletor's powers and stuff, or basically a lot of them were borrowed from Hordak, and making him into the whole character he was, and then we were going to do a showdown between Hordak and Skeletor.
Yeah.
Did a whole thing for that, where that was coming from and all that. Hordak wants out, and
He's like in purgatory, he's in
in his
hell.
version of purgatory, right?
Yeah. And he gets he comes. I remember you telling me what you guys had planned. Yeah, you told me what you guys had planned. Like Hordak comes into their Eternian world, and it becomes hell on Eternia, literally hell on Earth.
Oh,
Yeah, we
And
were gonna make
now,
He-Man be the one that actually got him off, because he trying to save his father's, there's a whole thing. It was a
Yeah.
cool story because that thing I was telling you about between the two of them,
Mm,
riding battle cats, going at it with each other. The one thing that Skeletor always had was he had a trick because if you watch from the beginning to the end, Randor does a signature move and disarms Skeletor. He
mm,
actually is a better sword fighter, though he's not as strong as a Gar. But Skeletor always has like a blade within a blade and pulled it out, and he was gonna,
mm,
embrace me,
mm.
brother, kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and to save his father, whose soul is going to where Hordak was, is going to do one of those kind of things, a descend to hell. And when
Wow.
he brings him out, instead of bringing out his father, he brings out Hordak, who is guised as his father, and he says to Adam, "When you're dead, you're dead."
Wow. Well, you heard it here, folks. You heard it here. This is what the plans were for season three and beyond, perhaps. But that being said, those first
It
two,
may have never happened because there's so many different directions everybody wanted to go. And if
right?
you look at it, you can kind of see it doing that. So, yeah.
Okay. Nonetheless, it's a fun show. I
It
mean,
was a fun
I,
show.
Abs-
I, I bought the box set. My kid, when he was little, he watched all of them. So I think it's yeah, that will hopefully it will continue to entertain the young ones as the next generation shows it to them.
Mhm.
And it was
Well,
a
the
lot
cool
of
thing is,
fun.
the cool thing aside from He-Man is we've all worked on a lot of really cool stuff in our filmography.
Mhm.
So the the juice is that I we have these memories of He-Man, but we also have all these other shows that we worked on that we can, reminisce with our kids and sit down and watch other people's shows. So it's constantly moving. So you can't just be like, oh, we should have. It's like, yeah, but I got to do this other thing on this other movie or
Oh
this
yeah.
other TV show,
Mhm.
or it's like, yeah, this. There's so many shows we get to work on, and it's so much fun and the relationships you develop over the decades.
I'm going to do a
So,
little cowboy antidote to close it off with, and going off exactly what you said. But
mhm.
I went on a wild Mustang roundup, but the Mustangs toward us and they broke and they're
Wait, wait,
going,
wait, wait, Garrett, you ride horses?
yeah.
Yeah, this should be a matter of it should be put on record as that Gary uh would take some crap back in the day for like, who is this guy walking around in a cowboy hat and cowboy boots? Who does this guy think he is? Some kind of
That's
cowboy?
just him. That's
And the
him.
answer is yes, he is. He has a horse ranch up in the mountains.
Histaic, yeah.
Yep, and he breaks horses, he trains them. It's a whole thing he's got out the whole ranch, the Gary Ranch. So it's yeah, he's the
Hmm.
real deal.
This goes off of what Linnell said because it goes to this experience because we were chasing these horses and they broke and we all had to break in different groups to get it. And as I'm riding beside a friend of mine, I'm like, oh, I feel bad that we didn't bring the horses in. We didn't do the big thing. He goes, Gary, we're chasing wild horses over, this open range. He goes, we're not getting paid for this. It doesn't get better than this. It was kind
Yeah.
of, break your beer open for that kind of moment. But it was, I was like, yeah, enjoy that moment, and we enjoy doing this. And I think that's it. If you can get on a show that you're just loving what you're doing and you love coming to work and you love the people that are there,
Yeah, that's
getting
important too. You don't always get
a
that.
big part.
Like any other job, it's about or when you're in the battlefield or down in the trenches, whatever. It's
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
guy next to you, the guy you're working with, who's got your back. And that's not always the case, but it was a great work environment. And as usual, it was because of the person that was leading that, and that would be you, Gary. So you're a great guy to work with,
Yeah,
and
everybody loves this guy.
I'd be
Everybody
happy to
loves
do
this
it again.
guy. Yeah.
So
I believe me, I was trying. I was trying. I pitched a bunch of shows. I was trying to get the band back together in some form,
mm,
another for the last 20 years. But it's just like, I
so
personally would attribute it to Mr. Hartle right here. Gave pretty much helped give me my first job, and is one of my dear friends and mentors, and walked me through and a lot of early parts of my career and the perspective of like how to understand cinema, think about visual storytelling, think about how to tell a story, as well as sort of relationships, just with just people, just enjoy the relationships you have with people. But yeah, I gotta give props to my friend right here.
Yeah, it was a real trip. It was real, a lot of fun to work on that show.
All right, guys. I think that's a pretty great place to end this. Hopefully, we've shed some light on our experiences working on this fun show, and
Probably
that's
made more questions than answers.
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Uh, it's all inside baseball,
Yeah,
guys.
we're not here to give all the answers. Just
No, man,
give a
find your own
window
answer.
into the past.
All right, brother.
I think we did that. So thanks a lot, guys, for coming on, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
All right, take
For
care.
sure.